My old boss, let's call him Mr. Henderson, was not a man known for his flexibility or his understanding of anything beyond the most basic spreadsheet. He ran the regional distribution center for a national hardware chain like a tightly wound clock, obsessed with efficiency and adhering to policy, regardless of context or common sense. I was a shift supervisor in the receiving department. My job was to oversee the unloading of incoming trucks, verify the inventory against the packing slips, and ensure everything was properly logged and moved to its designated storage location. It was a relatively straightforward job, but Mr. Henderson found ways to complicate it, usually by implementing some new, utterly pointless procedure designed to save fractions of a penny per pallet. The issue started with the receiving dock doors. We had 10 of them, all equipped with automated roll-up doors. Over the years, the paint on these doors had become chipped and faded. They looked like dock doors that had been repeatedly scraped by trucks for a decade. Not terrible, but certainly not aesthetically pleasing. Apparently, corporate noticed. Mr. Henderson received a memo demanding that the dock doors be repainted. Not just any repainting, mind you. They had to be painted a specific shade of gray. Not just any gray either, but RAL 7016 anthracite gray. A color so specific it felt like it had been chosen by a committee of colorblind accountants. Mr. Henderson, ever the loyal soldier, took this directive to heart. He posted the memo on the bulletin board and called a meeting of all the shift supervisors. "Gentlemen," he declared, puffing out his chest, "corporate has spoken. These doors are an embarrassment, and they will be brought up to standard. I want these doors repainted, and I want them repainted correctly. That means RAL 7016 anthracite gray. No substitutions, no close-enoughs. I will personally inspect each door, and if it doesn't match, you will be held accountable." He then distributed copies of the memo, complete with the official Pantone code and a small, laminated paint chip for reference. It felt absurd. We were running a distribution center, not an art gallery. But Mr. Henderson was serious. "Now, I'm not a painter. I'm a supervisor. I manage people and processes, I don't wield a brush." So, I did what any reasonable person would do. I contacted the facilities department and requested that they handle the repainting. That's where the fun began. Facilities, already stretched thin dealing with leaky roofs and broken forklifts, promptly informed me that painting dock doors was not a priority. They were backed up for months, and besides, they didn't have a budget for it. They suggested I contact an outside contractor. I relayed this information to Mr. Henderson. He was not pleased. "An outside contractor?" he sputtered. "Are you insane? Do you know how much that would cost? We have perfectly good employees who can paint." He then proceeded to inform me that I was now responsible for finding a suitable employee to repaint the doors. And, of course, it had to be done during regular working hours, without disrupting the flow of inbound shipments. Oh, and I had to stick to the budget of as close to zero as possible. I considered my options. I could try to strong-arm one of my crew into doing it, but that would just breed resentment and probably result in a half-assed job. I could try to argue with Mr. Henderson, but that was like arguing with a brick wall. So, I decided to take a different approach. I went to the local hardware store, the competitor down the street, much to Mr. Henderson's horror had he known, and purchased a gallon of RAL 7016 anthracite gray paint. It cost me about $40 out of my own pocket. I figured I could expense it later. Then, I went to the employee break room and posted a notice. It read, "Attention all employees * opportunity for additional training and career advancement. The receiving department is seeking one highly motivated individual to participate in a special training program on industrial painting techniques. This program will provide hands-on experience in surface preparation, paint application, and quality control. Successful completion of this program may lead to future opportunities within the company. Interested candidates should submit a brief written statement outlining their qualifications and interest in the program to my name by the end of the day." The response was underwhelming. Most of my crew were seasoned veterans who had no interest in learning how to paint. But one name stood out, Tim. Tim was a relatively new employee, a young guy fresh out of high school. He was eager to please, always willing to take on extra tasks, and generally a good worker. He also happened to be incredibly literal. I called Tim into my office. Tim, I said, I see you're interested in the painting training program. Yes, sir, he replied, beaming. I've always been interested in art. I used to paint miniatures in high school. Excellent, I said, trying to keep a straight face. Well, this program is a little different than painting miniatures. We'll be painting dock doors. With RAL 7016 anthracite gray paint. I held up the laminated paint chip. Tim examined the chip with the seriousness of a seasoned art critic. Very nice, he said. A sophisticated choice. Indeed, I said. Now, the training program is very intensive. It requires meticulous attention to detail, adherence to strict guidelines, and a willingness to follow instructions precisely. Are you up for the challenge? Absolutely, sir, Tim exclaimed. Good, I said, because here's the thing, Tim. Corporate is very, very particular about the color. It must be RAL 7016 anthracite gray. No more, no less. Understand? Understood, sir. I then handed Tim a copy of the memo, the paint chip, and a can of the RAL 7016 anthracite gray paint. Your training begins tomorrow, I said. Report to dock door number 1 at 8 a.m. sharp. And remember, Tim, the color is key. The next morning, I arrived at dock door number 1 to find Tim meticulously preparing the surface. He was sanding down the chipped paint, cleaning the area with a degreaser, and applying a primer. He was taking this whole thing way too seriously. Looking good, Tim, I said, trying to sound encouraging. Remember to keep it consistent. Tim nodded solemnly and continued his work. For the next week, Tim painted. He painted every single day, for 8 hours a day. He painted with the dedication of a medieval monk illuminating a manuscript. He painted with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker assembling a timepiece. And he painted only *RAL 7016 anthracite gray. He painted the dock doors, of course. But he also painted the door frames, the door tracks, the hinges, the handles, the weather stripping, the concrete around the doors, the loading dock bumpers, and even the small metal boxes that housed the door controls. Anything and everything within a 5-foot radius of the dock doors was now coated in a thick layer of RAL 7016 anthracite gray paint. He'd taken my instructions to heart. I said paint the doors RAL 7016 anthracite gray. I never said anything about not painting everything else in RAL 7016 anthracite gray. At first, I was amused. Then, I was impressed. Then, I started to feel a little uneasy. This was escalating quickly. I tried to subtly steer Tim away from his monochromatic obsession. Tim, I said one afternoon, maybe you should focus on just the doors themselves. We don't want to overdo it, you know? But sir, Tim replied, his brow furrowed in confusion, you said the color was key. And I want to make sure everything matches. Consistency is important, isn't it? I sighed. I had created a monster. By the end of the week, the entire receiving dock had been transformed into a gray abyss. It looked like a scene from a dystopian science fiction film. The only things that weren't RAL 7016 anthracite gray were the trucks, the forklifts, and the employees. And then Mr. Henderson saw it. He arrived on Monday morning, ready to conduct his personal inspection. He strode into the receiving dock, clipboard in hand, a look of grim determination on his face. His jaw dropped. He stood there, speechless, staring at the gray landscape before him. His eyes darted around, taking in the full extent of Tim's handiwork. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He just stood there, gaping like a fish. Finally, he managed to stammer, what happened here? I stepped forward, trying to maintain a semblance of composure. Mr. Henderson, I said, as per your instructions, the dock doors have been repainted RAL 7016 anthracite gray. I assigned Tim to the task, and he took it very seriously. He wanted to ensure complete adherence to the specified color. Mr. Henderson's face was turning an alarming shade of purple. He looked like he was about to explode. But, he painted everything, he sputtered. Yes, sir, I replied. He wanted to be thorough. Mr. Henderson was beyond words. He just shook his head, muttered something about going to corporate, and stormed off. I fully expected to be fired. I figured I'd be cleaning out my desk by lunchtime. But something unexpected happened. A few hours later, Mr. Henderson returned. He looked defeated. He called me into his office. All right, he said, his voice flat. Corporate saw the pictures. I braced myself. They actually kind of liked it. I stared at him in disbelief. They said it's bold and innovative. They said it demonstrates a commitment to consistency and reinforces the company's brand identity. He paused, shaking his head. They're sending a photographer next week to take pictures for the company newsletter. I couldn't help but laugh. So, Mr. Henderson continued, corporate wants you to continue with the project. They want you to paint the entire distribution center RAL 7016 anthracite gray. I choked on my laughter. And they're giving you a budget of $50,000. He looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and resignation. Just make sure it's done by the end of the quarter. And that, my friends, is how I became the supervisor of the most consistently gray distribution center in the country. And it all started with a memo, a paint chip, and one very literal employee named Tim. As for Tim, he got a promotion and a raise. He's now in charge of all things RAL 7016 anthracite gray for the entire facility. He loves his job. Sometimes, the best way to deal with ridiculous rules is to follow them to their absurd conclusion. And sometimes, that absurd conclusion leads to unexpected and hilarious results. And sometimes, just sometimes, corporate accidentally stumbles upon a bold and innovative idea while trying to micromanage the color of dock doors. All hail the color of efficiency, RAL 7016.